architects should target people that don't know that they need or want an architect yet. By the time somebody's decided that they want to engage an architect or a designer or an artist or something, they're then researching the field, right? So you're instantly in competition with a bunch of people, unless they're coming to you for a specific purpose. But if you target them before they know that they need you, then they'll be like, oh, I remember when, Gerard from Gerard Dombrowski Workshop came and talked to me that time. Well, maybe I'll use him to do my project. Kind of vibe. And I thought that was really interesting. And that's definitely sort of an approach that we've decided to take with our marketing, is put ourselves before the public, before they know that they need us.
Hello, welcome to Design Principles Podcast, episode 3. You're here with myself, Gerard Dombrowski Workshop, Ben Sutherland, Bear Architecture, and Sam Brown of Arete. Today we're going to discuss marketing. Boom. The tumultuous waters of marketing.
How to promote ourselves. Yeah.
Rock on. So I guess we'll crack things off. I'll give you guys a little insight to my wobbly world. I think this whole conversation ties into episode 1, where we're sort of discussing ourselves again. So I guess this is a very lived experience discussion. So there's lots of stories there. So I think from a lot of my strategy has come out of working at a job previously and sort of, I guess, reacting to their tactics to a degree. And giving a context in how I don't want to do things, I guess. If we can say that nicely. So that, which is, and there's lots of thoughts running around, because that comes full context, because they ran a lot on word of mouth, and word of mouth turns out is very good and works really well. If you've
got a deep pool of connected people to draw from.
Yeah, I guess that was a business that had gone for a long time. So there was like a deep pool of pre-existing clients and stuff there. And then I had this theory that you get the work you're seen doing, perhaps, and if you can get into magazines and into media, then surely that lays like a foundation for a wider audience. So that's kind of been my approach, is trying to set a foundation as much as possible and engaging with magazines and different.
Do you find, Gerard, the magazine one's an interesting one? Obviously, word of mouth's a very simple way of marketing what you do, and it's very direct. If a client's looking to come to you from a word of mouth point of view, they know exactly what they're coming to you for. But from a magazine or publication point of view, do you feel like those avenues are targeting potential clients, or are they just targeting other architects, or are they just targeting your peers? Because it's something that I've always struggled with.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of that depends on the magazine as well, because I guess being architects, you want to get into
but only architects read the architecture magazines. Well, and I think that's a valid point. If you're an architecture NZ, that's cool, and your peers get to see and recognise your work, but only your peers, really. As funny as it sounds, it's almost better if you're looking for prospective clients to be in magazines like Home and Garden or something that's a little bit more far-reaching.
Yeah, exactly. Apparently their viewership is massive.
But are we too proud to sort of feature our work in a magazine like that?
Well, I think we start off these things with great ambitions and ideals, and then you slowly see the gaps in your logic and see that those sorts of magazines and stuff may have better feedback. I think Here and Home and stuff are pretty good, but perhaps Architecture NZ, I don't think that.
They sort of, I guess, Here and Home, they sort of flirt between that more accessible magazine, the general public are more likely to read, And the local project in Australia
Yeah,
as well is another good example. Whereas you've kind of got these other ones, these more architecture centric ones, which are less likely to reach potential clients.
Yeah, essentially though, if you've got a project that is magazine worthy, you're going to be pushing it along, or into as many magazines as possible, though. Really, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all a potential avenue for promotion, right? And I guess we're talking about print publication here, which I think still very much has merits, but less so than it used to. And this kind of brings us nicely into the discussion around social media and how far-reaching that is. I mean, how much do you guys value or view social media as a strong form of marketing or building your brand?
And just quickly to point out, I guess like some of our, whatever old employers or older firms definitely didn't have that social media aspect back in the day. So I guess for them, relying on their own reputation, their previous projects and how they were executed, and word of mouth is probably their main play. I can't imagine them, some of them anyway, are embracing social media, but not to the extent that we rely on it today.
That's a generational thing though, right? We're all young.
Absolutely.
In our fields.
Yeah. So it's kind of a newish aspect to marketing that we are lucky enough to benefit from now.
Yeah, and like different generations use the tools they have at the time. That's something I've had to convince myself of sometimes. So I guess when you get real into architecture and you just want to have some integrity, it's easy to trick yourself into thinking that maybe social media doesn't have as much merit as other things. But if you look back in time, Frank Lloyd Wright used every media possible to him. He was all over the news, go on as many interviews as possible, and I wonder if that had an impact on his career.
Absolutely.
So I think you really just got to use the tools you're given. And
So on that, given our main tool is social media now, how have you guys found it for building a brand and marketing purposes?
I think it's a good day to day. I kind of use it as in my stories. I'll show process and pictures of things and works in progress, and then I'll kind of keep the portfolio side of Instagram just to kind of nice finished pictures, which I don't know has its drawbacks because stories are only up for a little bit, and it's probably partially my laziness. And I've always been big on photography, which I think photography is a big underlying current all through marketing. So I've always only tried to put nice photos on my Instagram.
It's an expensive undertaking, though, unless you're a good photographer yourself.
Yeah. I've been quite intentional about it right from when I started making furniture. 2016, I think, was my first photography commission. Commissioning a photographer. And I've done that ever since. So I've spent a lot of money on photography over the time, but I think its values.
Have you recognised have you recognised that investment? Well, not even that, but it's kind of garnered the kind of recognition or I guess exposure of your work that you were hoping to.
Well, I think it's another big issue with the whole marketing and setting a trajectory of your practice, I think, is understanding time, and that Rome wasn't built in a day. Yep. So for me, it's been a very slow process. This is 2016 was a while ago now. So it's incremental, and you're laying these, I don't know, seeds of photographs or whatever you're investing in to get you along the way. And I think now it's starting, in the last few years, it's been starting to pay off, starting to get a lot more recognition. I love print. I'm a big believer in print. But I think social media allows you to have the small the small sort of inch platform where magazines or other people can then, I guess, pick through their local, I don't know, all New Zealand architects that have social media or whatever. And
it's similar to what you were saying before about Frank Lloyd Wright. It's essentially it's about creating an audience, and that's what he was doing, whether it be public speaking or events or whatnot. All you're trying to do is extend your reach as far as possible, and social media is an easy way to do that. You post regularly, and consistency, I guess, is a key part to it, but it allows you to reach as many people as possible.
Yeah, I just want to come back to a point that Gerard made earlier, and that was, it's a long process thing, is what he said. He said he started photographing his work and trying to promote it in 2016, and we're sort of been faced with that slow approach thing as well, and that it takes a long, like this, our industry is a slow moving industry. You don't start a project on day one of your business and it's finished on like day 20, and then all of a sudden you've got a backlog of work you can start promoting. We're for us, we're like 3 years into the existence of our practice, and only in the last sort of 3 or 4 months have we started completing projects and having them photographed and putting them up for awards and having them ready to put out for publication and things like that. And so it's been quite hard to market off actual built or real projects. And for so long, we've felt a little bit like a pretender in that the only way we've been able to promote our work is based on like paper architecture or paper design. It's a promise. We haven't been able to prove that we can deliver. And now we can. It's going to be really interesting for us. And we are, because we now have this body of work that we can actually start to promote that's real, and we're pushing that quite hard. It's going to be interesting to see if that has an impact on our marketing and the response that we get, because we've pushed pretty hard in the past on concept work, I guess, but haven't really realized much of a response on that because, it's not real. How do you find that, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going through that exact same thing. Obviously, new company, it's hard to start a new company with, a bunch of built projects. It's just not realistic. So you have to kind of start somewhere, and that really makes it hard to post consistently or anything like that, because you just don't have the content. So what do you do in that situation? You just got to keep working, and that's essentially why it takes so long to build up your an index of projects over a
I think as well though, like what you can't be shy about, and you've noted this to me before, Ben, is if you don't have a big body of work, don't be shy about just pushing the same stuff over and over and over again, because every time you post something on social media, or every time you put something out to market, whatever marketing strategy you'll use, be that print publication or whatever, you're always going to capture new eyes, right? There's so many people out there that you're not going to hit the same people time and time and time again, particularly with social media. And, you've got these ways of targeting new audiences with hashtags and mentions and all that sort of stuff. So every time you post something, be it the same project time and time again, just use different kind of hashtags or ways of targeting different markets, be that like locations that it targets and things like that, and you're always going to get new eyes. So it's not, I wouldn't shy away from reproducing work on those forums,
Yeah, that's a good point. And also, I guess, like, how many platforms would you consider using? Obviously, Instagram is a no-brainer for, kind of the architecture realm. It's allows you to post images, which is essentially what
we do.
What we do, yeah. So, but what about other stuff? Like, I guess Facebook also, that's kind of tied into Instagram anyway. And obviously having a good website is basically your business card, your modern business card. So absolutely critical.
Yeah.
How have you guys found that you're getting, people just from search engine optimization coming through your website?
I've found SEOs to have no real impact. I mean, I think that we've had maybe in the last 3 years, we've had 2 inquiries come through our website, which isn't a lot.
I bet you've had a lot of people look at your website to understand a little bit more about
yourself. That is true, but I don't think that it's the avenue for getting work as much as, well, and this may be our shortcoming, as much as, let's say, Instagram is, because it's not as regular and it's not as current. And like maybe we should just update our website more often, but that's quite time consuming and difficult to do.
Well, they start with Instagram and then they would go to your website if they liked what they saw.
The two work hand in hand for sure. You can't have one without the other. Yeah. And the nice go Drew.
Well, I think they all work together. Like you're creating like a little spider web, I guess, of you're just trying to get people eyes on projects, I guess. So when you're trying to get stuff in magazines, you're hoping that then they Google you or Instagram you.
I guess what you're trying to form is like really cohesive narrative about who you are as a business or who you are as an architecture practice. And everything, like you said, goes hand in hand. It builds a spider web. So obviously your website is probably that's your home, right? That's your plush like base that people come to see the best of what you have to offer, and then probably the most information as well. But then all these other little things, be that Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or Reels or what have you, they're building a narrative about what you do, who you are, why you do it. And print media is the same. If you're if you're a sustainably focused practice or doing sustainable design, you may target like Green Magazine, for instance, rather than another publication. So you're trying to sort of weave, like you said, the spider web that creates this really cohesive narrative of who you are as a brand and as a business.
Yeah, and Gerard, I have a question for you because I guess your business having both, the artist side and also the architecture, and essentially your company name is your name. So essentially what you're doing is you're creating a personal brand. How tied in is your personal brand with your company brand, or do you is there any sort of separation there, or is it just essentially one and the same, do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of one and the same. I guess one of the slight issues I've run into is that like you're trying to create a brand that's architecture, furniture, art. I don't know, like just the whole thing is art in my mind. That it's hard to communicate to people that you're an architect and you do furniture and you do something else. Like for some reason that
so you're getting pigeonholed into each one of these sort of categories.
Yeah, so sometimes I'll get asked, so when did you quit architecture? Or
really?
I'm like, no, I've got I've got a bunch of projects on the go currently.
So that kind of brings us on to our next sort of like area or topic of discussion, which we've sort of outlined today, and that's understanding your personal market and defining your niche. I mean, it sounds like you're sort of struggling in a way because I guess your niche is really art or artistically focused work, right? Do you find that hard to portray, or sounds like you find it quite hard to portray to the market that you're looking to target?
I don't know if it's hard to portray, but I think it's hard to portray that you do multiple things. So I think it's easy to communicate to Instagram that you do one thing. Like it's an issue I've made myself. I just am outputting lots of chairs, lots of furniture, and then architecture's a lot slower. And I've had an aversion to renders for a very long time. So I think I've only put out one render on my Instagram. Right. That was in a story. Just couldn't bring myself to it.
Do you think that's something that you'd look to sort of maybe embrace a little bit more to continue to build that more cohesive narrative like we've discussed?
Yeah, I was wary of putting too many renders out early just because I wanted built projects in there, so then if people then see renders, you've got some validation that yes, you can deliver a building. which probably wasn't in like a wise way to go about it. But alas, it's done now.
Yeah.
We've made the bed. But yeah, I guess if we circle back to the intent is to make like a design practice that like multidisciplinary, that I do architecture, bespoke furniture. So I don't know. I have a love of design and a strange need to design everything.
How would you describe your niche? Can you describe it, or is it more of just like a personal brand?
Yeah, I think so. My niche, I guess, is that it is my artistic output. So I guess like people go to Sean Godsell for Sean Godsell because he's got such a strong aesthetic.
Yeah.
Or so I'm just want to be an architect that people go to for my take on things.
See, this is interesting. Is a personal brand such as you're like you were just talking about? Is a personal brand a niche? Because essentially, a niche is more, in my mind, you create some sort of competitive advantage, whereas architecture, especially, is so aesthetically based that sometimes that your niche just is, or people come to you because they like your designs or they like your architecture, or that kind of becomes your stamp, I guess, your business card or something like that.
A visual language.
But it's not essentially a competitive advantage. Well, I guess it kind of is, because no one can do what you're doing because it's your design.
If you're quirky enough, if you've got a very distinct style, or if you've got a very distinct way of operating that sort of separates you from the majority of your peers, then it totally is a niche, I think. And if you think about, let's go back to like early Ath, for instance, or like Roger Walker, or those guys in those sort of like early 80s, 90s, and the stuff that they were doing, 100% they had a niche, without a doubt. And people would go to them for that specific design and to work with those specific architects because that's what they wanted. I think that's probably, I'd argue that it's less of the case these days, because we are not as a general rule, throughout the industry, we're less experimental and distinct in our design
more
style.
Compliance based. So it's hard to get around a lot of those restrictions.
In terms of planning.
Well, in terms of regulations,
No, I think it's like clients' attitude for risk.
I agree with Gerard. I definitely think so. And I also think
there's huge scope within our building code for a shit ton of creativity.
Yeah, that's true. Not as much as then, but I
think
true.
People because people are so much more careful with their money, and money is a lot harder to like get in terms of lending and things like that these days. I think people want.
Well, I would argue it's easier.
I think people want a sure thing, though, right? Resale's also a massive consideration, more so these days than I feel like it used to be.
So essentially, it's probably mentality, because I would arguably back then people kind of wanted to design a house to live in it forever.
Exactly.
Now people are kind of chopping and changing.
I had a real estate agent complaining to me in the weekend about why everyone makes their houses grey.
Really? I thought they loved it.
Bearing on. Oh, not this one.
Oh, that's interesting. I thought they loved it because it's easy to sell. It's
that was very refreshing to hear. Well, I think it makes it harder to sell because it's just like everyone else. So if you're doing a basic house exactly the same as everyone else, it's going to be hard to find that point of difference.
Back on the niche thing, Gerard, we sort of talked about yours. Ben, your one's quite interesting as well, because I feel like you're coming at development from an architectural point of view, and we mentioned this in the last episode, and you sort of, I feel like you're following in the footsteps, maybe consciously or subconsciously, of people like Hip vs. Hype from Australia. How are you looking to separate yourself in that realm?
I guess there's two avenues. One, I will never not have an architecture firm with a construction company attached to it. So I guess that is somewhat of a competitive advantage, and that's just basically because of my history in construction and my need to not only design or control the architecture side of things, but also the construction. So that's kind of one avenue. But in terms of the development side, interestingly, my customer is slightly different, as I would be mainly, like I definitely have more general architecture clients as well, but they are mainly selling at a different stage. So we're getting to sort of build majority of the building at least, or at least kind of selling off plans or selling a completed product as opposed to designing for a client. So the end customer's purchasing a product that's already maybe not being completed, but close to. So yeah, I guess like from our point of view, it's more of like what Gerard was talking about not creating grey houses and that sort of thing. It's more about like keeping an eye on what is market trends and what people want, and targeting certain demographics and understanding the market a little bit better. So not just designing a product or a house for the sake of designing a house, but being like, who's buying in this area? What are they buying? What do they need? Do they need a 3-bedroom? Is it like a family, or is it like a elderly demographic? If it's elderly, do they need elevators? It's like access needs to be designed completely
it's fascinating.
Different. A lot of, we talk to a lot of real estate agents, and we try and identify like, okay, they know this area, that's their profession, that's their job. Who's buying? What are they buying? What do they need? What's selling? And we kind of work back from there. But, obviously there's that whole brand as well, brand identity. So we're bringing our own design aesthetics to these things and making them to the best.
Do you reckon you're going to
ability.
maintain, do you feel like you'll maintain quite a lot of flexibility in your design aesthetic to fit and mold with market trends though?
This is a great question. And the reason is I've been thinking a lot about this recently, and essentially it depends on when the product is sold or when the purchaser becomes a part of the process. Because if you're selling off plans, then essentially you're creating the structure, I guess, but the actual purchaser has the opportunity to make tweaks that they kind of want to make, and that's like, within a certain extent. We don't go and do anything that we don't think is of good quality and good value, but then they have the chance to adapt the building slightly to, make some adjustments to suit their needs a little bit better. So yeah, I guess a lot of that depends on when the building is actually purchased or sold.
Right. I want to just circle back quickly to an interesting point that you just made about you work quite closely with real estate agents. And that's something that we, that I feel like we don't often do as architects, but something that we personally at Arete have started doing recently as well. Is I actually think we've realized that there's a lot of benefit in creating those relationships with real estate agents. As slimy as it might sound sometimes, they are, you're right, they're the people that probably have their finger on the pulse of the market. This is particularly I guess we're coming at it from a residential point of view, but I feel like this is probably relevant to commercial as well. They've got their finger on the pulse of what's happening in the market. They've got the connections with buyers. And, if you ingratiate yourselves with real estate agents, they can put you on to potential clients probably more easily and more effectively than you could ever do through other marketing avenues.
Yeah, and it's a huge strategy, especially up here. There's real estate agents have preferred architects, and a lot of clients go to real estate agents and be like, "Oh, I'm looking for such and such and such in this kind of area," and they'll actually just refer them.
So that's up in Auckland.
They're generally up in Auckland. I haven't seen it as much, but then again, I haven't tried in Wellington, but I'm sure that same sort of...
Yeah, I've got a friend who gets a lot of work through real estate agent.
We're sort of targeting it down in Central Otago as well, because that is one area that there's a huge amount of spare land or like, development land or plots of land that are available for new build. And so we're really kind of targeting the real estate agents and quite carefully, targeting the ones that have their names all over sections rather than actual houses, and coming to them and being like, hey, we're here. If you've got clients that are interested, send them our way, kind of thing.
Absolutely. I think of it from like a developer's perspective. They need to know what the market is doing. They're not going to go and build, well, I mean, a lot of them do, but it's stupidity, really. But, they're not going to go build a bunch of houses without doing that research. They really just kind of design because that is what the market wants, and that's what's selling in those specific regions.
Kind of continues on into that sort of collaboration avenue that we were talking about, right?
I was actually just quickly before we move to collaboration, Sam, I guess like you've got something similar going on, but with more of a, another type of niche, which would be like targeting certain typologies of architecture, for example, sustainability, and attracting people that are like-minded people, essentially, that are interested in similar things as you are, which is a huge marketing strategy.
Yeah, it is. And that's...
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
It's interesting. It's definitely... When we started out, we always wanted to... One of the big reasons for starting my own firm was to kind of work with the clients you want to work with. But... And we have done that, but it's taken probably about 3 years for us to really define what that meant. And where it's landed us in is what we like to call this holistic architecture field. And that might sound a bit like, Buddhist prayer flags, airy-fairy kind of stuff. But what we're really trying to say with the holistic architecture thing is that it's architecture that targets every aspect of design or every aspect of a residential build. So it's not just aesthetics. It's not just performance. It's not just sustainability. It's everything all kind of bundled up into one. And so it's what we've really looked to target and present with our work. And yeah, you're right. What that's meant is we've sort of really put ourselves in this niche of high performance, sustainable architecture for clients that want exactly that thing. Because I think people aren't going to come to you unless they've done their research first. And if you're not an expert and can't present an expert opinion, then you're sort of sitting there a little bit false. So we've had to really like upskill ourselves within our practice to be able to like hold ourselves in that niche and validate ourselves as well.
Yeah. If we get to the meat of things real quick, I think an interesting analysis would be like if you've had much feedback from presenting this sort of these directions via social media and things, like do you find any of that marketing paying off?
Like,
do you get many jobs through?
Does everyone call you asking for a sustainable
yes,
house?
And that's what. Recently, yes, and that's kind of interesting. Yeah. And one thing we're really struggling with is, we've got this list of projects at work that we revisit weekly, and the growing list of potentials is exciting. But the problem is none of them are converting. So I'm not quite sure how to get to that next stage. But yes, heaps of people are coming to us being like, "Look, we've seen you do this, we're interested." And like, there's a couple of avenues that I'll just quickly mention that we've used to put ourselves out to the public within this realm. One of those is Formance, who are the SIP design partners that we work with. They run open days for their builds, both mid-build, so you can kind of see how the things are fitting together, and then post-build, which are open to the general public. And we've run several of those now. I've got a post-build open day at my house down in Lake Hawea next Wednesday. And that's a great way of just being able to showcase your work to the general public. Basically, the house is there, they come in, Formants are there, we're there, the builders are there, they can come in and pick our brains. And we've had several inquiries come through that avenue. Again, nothing converted, but it's definitely been a good way of getting our work out there. And then the other avenue that we've used is really kind of outlining ourselves as specialists, particularly with the New Zealand Green Building Council, obviously through the Homestar process. And I've been invited to be an expert on a housing panel at the New Zealand Green Building Council Housing Summit in May. So it's just another way of kind of presenting yourself to the wider industry and general public as an expert in the field. And Yeah, we're definitely getting murmurs, but nothing concrete yet. So hopefully that'll all start to sort of evolve into proper work.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So what you're talking about is, networking and collaboration.
It's exactly it. That's a great segue because both of those avenues, one's collaboration with Formants, and then the NZGBC thing is totally networking.
Yeah, exactly. And it'll be really interesting to hear post-event if, the type of people you were meeting and if anything comes out of it. I would say in terms of the collaboration, there's plenty of opportunities.
Yeah, the collaboration collaboration thing's interesting. I found so far anybody that we've worked with in a collaborative sense, it's been relatively one-way traffic in the sense that they've sort of come to us and been like, look, we think that we can benefit from working together. We bring you work, you bring us work, and everyone's happy. So far, all that we've realized with the collaborators that we've worked with is that we've just given them work and nothing's come back the other way.
Yeah.
But all you can do is sort of sit there, continue to build that relationship and bide your time, and hopefully something kind of feeds back eventually.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. These things take a long time. I think that's underlying with lots of marketing.
Yeah. One thing that I find really interesting in this area is the difference between, I guess, like what you guys are traditionally or typically doing and what I'm doing is with the one-off clients, they're going to come to you for a house or a building of some description, but they're not going to come back next year and ask for another one. So your repeated customers, clientele were quite low. Whereas teaming up or collaborating with a developer, for example, you're getting ongoing work consistently because they finish one project, they're straight on to the next. So that is a form of collaboration that has been working really well for me and that I have been pushing really hard.
I totally agree, Ben. You're right in the sense that particularly for architects that predominantly do bespoke residential work, you don't have repeat custom. And to supplement that avenue of work, you do need to have sort of an offshoot. And a lot of the times architecture firms won't even tell you about them, but you need an offshoot of work that's just constant and ongoing. And, we're fortunate that we've got, we present ourselves as residential architects, but we still do quite a bit of hospitality and commercial work. And we're actually, we're doing more and more in the hospitality realm. And we've got Mojo as one of our key clients now and a lot of repeat work through them. And so, that's something that we'll probably start to lean more into from a promotional point of view is that, hey, we do more than just houses. We do this as well. But it's the whole chicken and egg thing. We haven't had the finished projects until very recently to be able to present to the wider public,
Yeah. Do you want to give us a rundown on a bit more depth into your
I'm
scenario?
intrigued to see how that works.
Because that's heavy on the collaboration networking side of things.
Yeah. Which part exactly? The development side?
Yeah, I think if you can delve into just like, well, one, what networking you do to kind of ingratiate yourself with more developers, and then also like how it works collaborating with them and on an ongoing basis would be interesting to hear about that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess similar to you, Sam, I have the opportunity to, I guess, collaborate with another construction company as well, but a lot of developers kind of go to them. They kind of work backwards, I guess. They're all about feasibility and pricing. So they start with the construction company because a lot of these bigger developers, because they need to know build costs at an early stage. They need to understand the numbers before they even purchase the property to make sure things all stack up. So I kind of get a lot through that avenue, through collaborating with other construction companies or directly with developers. At the moment, our construction side of things is only, small scale residential. So that does actually, I had one lady ring me the other day and she's like, oh, I see what you're doing in Auckland. I saw your sign out. That's awesome, which is another form of marketing. Can't go wrong with a good old job sign. And so she called me and she's like, this is you guys are, I see what you're doing here. I've got something similar I want to do. Like, will you come to this open home with me and check out this project? And I'm like, okay,
Just
cool.
quickly
Go
hold you
have
on
a
that
look.
open home thing, Ben. I went to an open home
Yeah.
with a friend the other day, the house that they were looking at purchasing in Wellington. And he was just like, look, can you come with me and just kind of, as a mate, tell me what I could and couldn't do. So I did that, obviously, just to help a brother out. But then afterwards, he was like, why don't you offer this service to everybody? Anybody that's
nice.
looking to buy a house. He's like, why don't you just say, hey, look, we can come, one-off fee of X amount. It gets absorbed into the overall contract if you want to move ahead with us to do renovation works or what have you. But I feel like it would give buyers a lot of confidence going into a purchase if they had an expert there beside them telling them what they could or couldn't do. Interesting avenue to target. Sorry to pause you, but it's interesting to hear you have that very similar experience to what I've had recently.
Yeah. Oh, I go to a fair amount of open homes, even just like
being nosy.
Interest. I like to see what's out there. I like to see what other architects are doing.
That's a good marketing tactic.
Just leave your card surreptitiously on the bathroom vanity.
Honestly, I think the key with the fundamental key to marketing is just being active. Being as active as possible in as many avenues as possible, talking to as many people, trying to get as much built as possible so you've got more content. Like every work that we generate comes from like us, either talking or doing something to actually acquire customers. Very rarely, if ever, we just kind of get someone walking in the door.
Activity's key.
Really
that's something that we've probably only really not cottoned onto, but really kind of realized the worth of recently is that you can't wait for something to happen. You've really got to push. And I feel like, for a lot of us, it's not necessarily in our character, but holy man, you've just got to go like all guns blazing. And you've got to just not be afraid of the no, like if what's the worst that somebody can say, oh, bugger off, we're not interested. But, if they're, for the every 10 that say bugger off, one says yes, it's worth it.
Oh, absolutely. I think, and so like all of these networking events, like essentially it doesn't matter if it's a potential client or potential collaboration, like just getting out there and for example, Gerard, your art, showcasing your art, you do an amazing job of that. How have you found that? Obviously, that's been working quite well for you.
Yeah, it's quite nice socially and really cool to meet other people. Like all of those exhibitions and stuff are in Auckland, the last one in Whangarei. But every time I go up north to Auckland or something, I try to catch up with one or two people I haven't met before.
And one leads to another,
Instagram's great. Yeah, and I don't know, it's just nice to meet other people doing the same thing as you as well. Make friends, I guess, as it were.
Yeah.
Because the other side of my niche, I guess, would be my workshop that I make things. And there's just no real other makers in Wellington. So there's no real, anybody to hang out with.
You're exhibiting at Whangarei Art Museum at the moment, right, Gerard? Do you find those sort of things a great avenue to further the opportunity to be able to present your work?
Definitely. It adds to viewership, I guess. And I've had quite a few exhibitions now. And so you just... it's more of a feeling. I can't see it tangibly, but obviously people are seeing these things slowly. So to me, it just feels like a slow building of awareness or visibility of me and my work, which has been an incredibly slow process, but it's working because I got an article in Island magazine. It's just a big
cool
8-page about my workshop, but I don't know if people read Island magazine because
you have to send us a copy. I was going to say, you're talking about
I'd go to
There you go.
Wickles to buy it.
You're talking about that slow build, and that's an interesting thing as well. And I guess it's a hope for a lot of us. But do you feel that slow build at some point the dam's going to burst, and then you're going to be like inundated, and you're going to be like, oh shit, what do I do now?
The workshop side's definitely getting there. Like, got quite a lot of shit in the workshop to build at the moment. But I guess that's like most of the media I've had is art or furniture, and the Piccolo, the little house, was the only probably. Oh no, I had a little kiln shed in Hermag, but there's very little architecture. Like there's a building I've done coming out soon in a magazine, so it'll be interesting to see if that has any change to the balance. So for all the stuff I've had, I've never had I've had one email, but I've never had a job come out of any of the media I've had.
Hey, I've got a question for you, just out of interest, and this is to you, Sam, as well. Has anyone done any paid marketing?
I did a $10 ad on some chairs because I tried to have a crack at products. So I've got like the one-off commissions that I build, and then just a line of products.
Yeah, I
mean, I don't know if $10 counts.
Yeah, I don't know.
Reached 10 people.
I was pretty generous about it.
And through a few different methods, like we've done paid ads on Instagram quite a bit, paid ads on Google quite a bit, just particularly in the early days to just get more eyes and more exposure. And what that resulted in was more followers, but no work.
Oh yeah, I mean
it is how it starts. We've also paid for a couple of newspaper advertising slots, which, in all honesty, was a total waste of time and money.
Do they ring you and try? And
I swear to God, everybody that gets newspaper just puts it straight into the firebox. So they did ring and sell the dream. We've got, and interestingly, a builder that we work with, Compound, down in Queenstown, they're having a feature article in Business South magazine, and Business South's hounding on our door at the moment to try and pay for an advert to go alongside their feature article. And I'm like, look, to be honest, I just cannot see this having any benefit. And they're like, oh, no.
I'm pretty sure we've been in that as well and had the same experience.
And you get sucked in. And a lot of the time, it's interesting. I don't know. Have you guys ever met Scotty from Scotty's Construction in Wellington? He's an incredibly high energy, lovely guy. But I was chatting to him the other day, and he was like, all it takes is one job. Even if you throw $10K into advertising, all it takes is one job and you'll realize that benefit back. And he has a good point. The problem being is that we don't have that money to put into advertising.
Every other industry pays for advertising. It's just something about the architects.
I also think, to be honest, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like generally as a small business, we run pretty close to the line, and like we don't have a huge amount of just like back capital to be able to like plug into marketing. And maybe that's a shortcoming on our behalf, and maybe we should annually like put together an advertising budget. We don't, but maybe we should.
Well, is there some sort of creative way that, I guess, like architects, what are other creative ways that architects do to exhibit their products or
start a podcast?
Absolutely.
Hard, given it's not a visual medium, quite hard to showcase your work through a podcast.
Some fool would be proud.
No,
I'm here for the good yarns, not the marketing, by the way.
I think different tactics, like Ben, you talked about different tactics. One of them, for instance, like those open home or those open days for us are invaluable, right? And I think that's something that architects should probably look to do a bit more. If you've got a project, and we've just seen it with the In Situ conference in Auckland, they did a trip to Waiheke Island to check out some projects over there. But That was just architects presenting to architects. You should be doing that to the general public. You finish a super cool build, say, hey, come in, as long as the clients are okay with it, obviously, say, hey, come and check it out. I think that's a great avenue to get work.
HEMAG does their open homes, which I think, like, I've been to one of those in Wellington before, and that was like a good mix of.
It's interesting because I listened to a podcast about marketing, particularly architectural marketing, last year, and my biggest takeaway, it was like 2 hours long. There's a lot of waffle, but my biggest takeaway from the whole thing was architects should target people that don't know that they need or want an architect yet. And I thought that was really interesting because they were saying, basically what they were saying, particularly for smaller businesses, is that by the time somebody's decided that they want to engage an architect or a designer or an artist or something, they're then researching the field, right? So you're instantly in competition with a bunch of people, unless they're coming to you for a specific purpose. But if you target them before they know that they need you, then they'll be like, oh, I remember when, Gerard from Gerard Dombrowski Workshop came and talked to me that time. Well, maybe I'll use him to do my project, kind of vibe. And I thought that was really interesting. And that's definitely sort of an approach that we've decided to take with our marketing, is put ourselves before the public, before they know that they need us.
Yeah, so that's interesting. And diving a little bit deeper, does that mean that you're talking to them before they have a
Generally,
project?
yeah. And I think that's like...
Going into schools.
Get them young. No, that's weird.
Because I guess the other way to think about it...
What does that look like?
Who do they go to once they have a project on? Who's the first person?
Well, a lot of the time it's builders, we've found, particularly with residential projects, a lot of the time people will come to a builder before they come to an architect. And Ben, interestingly, you talking about your discussion with real estate agents, they're the first people, people have to buy property, right? An estate agent has to broker that deal generally. So they're the first people that they're face to face with. And so your engagement with them, I think, is actually pretty critical.
Yeah, because that's quite interesting. Like, think about that a little bit more. How many clients that you guys have had already had the land or already had a building? I guess if it's a renovation and they have lived in the house for a period of time, that might be like, okay, it's time to renovate. But most of them would be like, okay, cool, I'm looking to buy this land and build a project, or I'm looking to sell my current house and buy another one.
Either that or they've just recently purchased. They've either just bought a new home and been like, we need to upgrade, or they've just built a piece of land and like, we need to build. But at that point, they know that they're looking for architects, so they're shopping the field. But if you're there before that, then you're the forefront of their mind. So that's our tactic.
So what are some ways you can do that?
Like I said, I think it's just, well, it is. It's Instagram. It's being present, and I think, one thing we briefly touched on it, you talked about having a site sign. It's those little things. It's when people having a sign on your car, whether that's beneficial or not. I mean, we do. And I've had people being like, oh, I've seen your sign around town kind of thing before. I think it's kind of being present and constant in people's subconscious helps a lot as well.
Yeah. I think staying visible, and then again, like using your tools to create a clear sort of message so you get sort of like-minded clients.
Yes.
Architecture is so relational that you really want people that you gel with, get on with.
So that brand identity really just comes into it a lot, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to attract the wrong customers.
One of my big learnings is I think I leant real hard on thinking Arc Daily would get me heaps of work.
Again, that's promoting just to architects again.
Yeah, it's like media, print, whereas word of mouth is pretty invaluable. Like, that's a pretty excellent way to get work if you just do a good job and hopefully they say nice things about you. Be a nice person. But I think like we've all got pretty clear understandings of what we do, and then time, man. It's just time.
And consistency.
Yeah, showing up
showing up and giving it a go.
Yeah, and I think being slightly tactical with your jobs. I try to be very tactical with my jobs. I only realised like last year that people have like these background jobs that they don't show.
Oh
people.
yeah, man. I'd say that like 80% of the work we do, we don't portray.
Because I have
Absolutely.
a policy where I only do work if it's magazine worthy.
That's going to limit you, man.
Yeah.
Good on you.
I got a work,
You
I got a workshop.
True.
you would be mind blowing at the amount of free work I do. just to like chase leads. Like, oh man, like
We're all doing free
chasing
work.
leads is a huge part of my day-to-day.
Oh, absolutely,
activities.
man.
That's a whole pod on its own, though. So maybe we should wrap it up.
Sounds
there.
good. It was a good discussion.
Please, if you like our content, let us know, and feel free to rate and subscribe and click that
Email
like button.
any questions or feedback that you might have to info@designprinciplespod.com as well.
That's our marketing for the day.
And a last minute big thanks to Connor Dolman for our visual art and Jacob Marshall for our sound art.
Nothing.
Awesome, guys. All right, peace.